Imagine a moment when you realize you can no longer pretend. The masks you've worn for decades suddenly feel suffocating. The games everyone's playing become transparently obvious. The life you've built starts to feel like a prison made of other people's expectations. You're not depressed. You're evolving. And with that evolution comes a slow, inevitable shedding of everything that isn't truly you. Abraham Maslow spent his entire life documenting this process. He watched thousands of people transform psychologically and noticed something profound: that genuine human development doesn't happen through dramatic declarations or sudden changes. It happens through a gradual releasing, a slow quitting of patterns that once felt like survival, but now feel like suffocation. Today, we're exploring the 7 things Maslow observed that people at higher levels of development slowly, almost involuntarily quit as they grow. These aren't conscious decisions at first. They're more like allergic reactions to inauthenticity that get stronger as your consciousness gets clearer. You don't wake up one day deciding to quit these things. You wake up one day realizing you already have. If you've been feeling like you can't engage with life the way you used to, like you're becoming incompatible with normal existence, this is why your psyche is slowly rejecting everything that isn't aligned with your authentic self. And according to Maslow, this rejection is not only inevitable, it's essential for your self-actu, AEATI, OE. The first thing people at higher levels quietly quit is the desperate hunger for approval. Not because they decide to, but because something shifts in their psychological structure that makes approval seeking physically uncomfortable. Imagine you've spent your whole life eating sugar, and suddenly your body develops an intolerance. That's what happens psychologically. The approval you once craved starts making you sick. Maslow watched this in subject after subject as they moved up the hierarchy of needs towards self-actualization. They reported strange discomfort in situations where they used to seek validation. A woman who lived for her mother's approval suddenly felt nauseous when trying to please her. A man who needed constant professional recognition found himself unable to care about promotions, not from rebellion, from evolution. Here's what's actually happening. As you develop psychologically, you begin to access what Maslow called your authentic self, your true core that exists beyond the approval-seeking ego. This authentic self doesn't need approval because it's already complete. It's like a tree that's found groundwater. It no longer depends on rain, but the quitting process is slow and often painful. You'll find yourself in a meeting about to say what everyone wants to hear, and suddenly you can't. The words get stuck. Your body rebels. You might even break into a sweat. It's not anxiety. It's your authentic self refusing to participate in the performance. One of Maslow's subjects described it perfectly. I used to rearrange my entire personality depending on who I was with. Now, when I try, it's like my psyche hits an emergency brake. I physically cannot contort myself for approval anymore. This creates a strange period where you've quit seeking approval internally, but haven't adjusted externally. You stop posting for likes, but still check your phone. You stop fishing for compliments, but still notice their absence. You're between worlds, no longer addicted to approval, but not yet comfortable without it. Maslow observed that this transition typically takes years. First, you quit seeking approval from strangers, then from acquaintances, then from friends. Finally, and most difficult, from family. Each layer of release brings both freedom and grief. You're not just quitting a behavior, you're quitting an identity. The woman who lived for her mother's approval went through months of what felt like withdrawal. She would automatically reach for her phone to call her mother for validation. Then remember, she couldn't do that anymore. Not because her mother wasn't available, but because her psyche wouldn't let her make the call. Her hands would literally shake when she tried. But here's the beautiful part Maslow documented. As the hunger for approval dies, something else is born. an unshakable sense of inner worth, not confidence, which still references others, but worth which references only itself. You stop needing others to validate your existence because you finally feel your existence from within. This is why self-actualized people often seem mysteriously confident. They're not trying to be. They've simply quit the exhausting game of earning their right to exist through others' approval. They found what Maslow called inner directedness, a compass that points true regardless of external opinions. The second thing people at higher levels quietly quit shocks many. The need to be special. This is counterintuitive, because aren't developed people supposed to know they're unique? Yes, but there's a profound difference between knowing your uniqueness and needing to be special. Maslow discovered that as people develop psychologically, they go through what seems like a paradox. They become more unique while caring less about being special. They become more themselves while needing less recognition for it. They become extraordinary by quitting the need to be seen as extraordinary. Here's what happens. Early in psychological development, people often experience what Maslow observed as ego inflation. They have a genuine growth experience and suddenly feel chosen, special, superior. They've achieved things others haven't. They've developed capacities others can't reach. They know things others don't. And for a while, this feeling of specialness feels like achievement. You might find yourself subtly, or not so subtly, letting others know about your accomplishments, your insights, your capabilities. You're not exactly bragging, but you're definitely differentiating yourself from the average masses. But then something shifts. Maslow observed this shift in every genuinely self-actualized person he studied. The need to be special starts to feel heavy, exhausting, false, like wearing a costume that once felt like wings, but now feels like chains. A man Maslow studied had built his entire identity around being intellectually superior. He was the one friends came to for answers, the one who always had the deepest insight, the one who read more, understood more, knew more than anyone else. Then one day, in the middle of explaining some profound concept, he just stopped, mid-sentence. He later told Maslow, "I suddenly saw myself from outside and I looked ridiculous. I was using intelligence to be special, which was keeping me from being genuine." This recognition begins the slow quit. You start catching yourself about to share your achievements for the hit of specialness, about to drop hints about your capabilities, about to position yourself as more developed than others. And each time you catch yourself, it becomes harder to continue. The quit manifests in subtle ways. You stop mentioning your accomplishments unless directly asked. You lose interest in comparing development levels. You quit needing others to know about your achievements. You become comfortable being seen as ordinary. You stop using your development to elevate yourself. One woman described her transition. "I used to need everyone to know I was different, deeper, more capable. Now I'm happy to be invisible." Being special was a prison. Being nobody is freedom. But here's what Maslow found fascinating. As people quit needing to be special, they become truly unique. Not performatively unique, authentically unique. When you stop trying to stand out, your genuine nature naturally distinguishes itself. When you quit performing your specialness, your actual special qualities emerge. Maslow called this self-actualization without narcissism. You become completely yourself without needing anyone to notice. You're like a flower that blooms whether anyone's watching or not. The blooming is for the blooming, not for the watching. This shift terrifies the ego, which has often built its entire structure on being special. If I'm not special, the ego asks, then what am I? The answer, which takes years to fully accept, you're you. That's enough. That's everything. The third thing people at higher levels quit is perhaps the most surprising. The performance of happiness, not happiness itself. the performance of it, the constant need to appear positive, successful. Together, Maslow observed that genuine psychological development doesn't make people perpetually happy. It makes them perpetually real. And reality includes the full spectrum of human experience: joy and sorrow, success and failure, strength and vulnerability. In our culture, there's enormous pressure to be happy, especially if you're successful. You're supposed to be grateful, positive, radiating confidence at all times. But Maslow discovered this performance of happiness is actually anti-developmental. It's another mask, just with a socially acceptable face. As people move towards self-actualization, they slowly quit this exhausting performance. They stop pretending everything is fine when it isn't. Stop forcing smiles when they're struggling. Stop posting only the highlights. They quit the bypass and embrace the reality. Professional Maslow went through this transition dramatically. She'd built her career on being the successful leader. Always confident, always positive, always in control. Then she went through a divorce, and she couldn't perform anymore. She tried to return to work with her professional persona intact, but her body wouldn't let her. She'd sit in meetings trying to be the confident leader, and her voice would just crack. She told Maslow, "I thought being developed meant transcending human struggle. Now I realize it means embracing it. I can't be the perfect one anymore. I can only be the real one." If you're recognizing yourself in these patterns, if you're feeling that slow release of things you used to grip tightly, I want you to know you're not alone. This journey of slowly quitting what no longer serves us is happening to millions of developing people right now. Before we explore the remaining 4 things people at higher levels quit, take a moment to subscribe to this channel and hit the notification bell to join our community of people who are courageously shedding the false to embrace the true. And please share in the comments what you found yourself slowly quitting. Your story might be exactly what someone else needs to hear. Today, let's continue this journey together, because the next patterns might be the very ones you're experiencing right now. The 4th thing people at higher levels quietly quit might be the most destabilizing: the need for certainty. The desperate grip on knowing, understanding, having answers. Maslow discovered that genuine psychological growth leads not to more answers, but to being comfortable with questions. Not to more certainty, but to peace with ambiguity. Not to knowing, but to wonder. This terrifies the mind, which has spent a lifetime collecting certainties like armor. I know who I am. I know what's true. I know how life works. I know my purpose. I know what success means. These certainties feel like safety, but Maslow observed they're actually prisons. As psychological depth develops, these certainties start to crack. Not because they're proven wrong, but because you realize the very need for certainty was keeping you from growth. Truth isn't something you can hold. It's something that flows. The moment you grip it, it becomes limitation. One of Maslow's most brilliant subjects was an executive who came to him in crisis. Her success had shattered her previous certainties. She said, "I used to know exactly what success meant. Now I realize I don't even know what a successful life looks like. The more developed I become, the less certain I am about anything." This wasn't confusion. It was clarity. She was seeing past the illusion of certainty into the reality of continuous growth. But the transition was agonizing. Her mind desperately wanted to rebuild certainty, to find new answers to replace the old ones. But every time she tried to crystallize a new truth, it would evolve. Maslow watched her slowly quit the need for solid ground. First, she quit needing to know exactly where she was going. Then, she quit needing to know why things happened. Finally, she quit needing to know who she really was in any fixed way. She entered what Maslow recognized as a state of becoming, where not knowing becomes more truthful than any knowing could be. This quitting of certainty happens in stages. First, you quit certainty about your path. Then you quit certainty about others' motivations. Then you quit certainty about your own past meaning. Finally, you quit certainty about your own identity being fixed. Each stage of release brings both terror and liberation. The ego experiences it as death, which it is. The death of the know-it-all mind that kept you safe but small. A woman described her process. I used to have strong opinions about everything. Career, relationships, success, life purpose. Now when someone asks what I believe, I honestly don't know. Not from confusion, but from openness. Every certainty I release creates space for something more beautiful than answers. Presence with what is. Maslow found that people who successfully quit certainty develop something remarkable. The ability to hold paradox. They can believe contradictory things simultaneously without needing resolution. They can act decisively without being certain. They can commit fully while staying open to being completely wrong. This isn't wishy-washy relativism. It's what Maslow observed as psychological maturity. The recognition that reality is bigger than any mental model can contain. You quit certainty not because nothing is true, but because truth is too alive to be caged in concepts. The fifth thing people at higher levels quietly quit is one of the hardest. Blame. Not just blaming others, but the entire victim-perpetrator narrative that the ego uses to make sense of difficulty. Maslow observed that as people develop psychologically, they undergo a radical shift in how they relate to their challenges. They stop seeing themselves as victims of circumstances and start seeing themselves as active participants in their own development. This isn't about excusing harm or bypassing real difficulties. It's about reclaiming power. The quitting of blame is slow and often painful because blame serves so many psychological functions. It explains our struggles. It preserves our innocence. It gives us an identity. It bonds us with others who've been similarly challenged. Letting go of blame can feel like letting go of our entire story. Woman came to Maslow filled with legitimate grievances. Difficult childhood. Unfair treatment in her career. Betrayals in relationships. Her frustration was justified. Her blame accurate, but it was also keeping her stuck. She was so identified with being wronged that she couldn't move forward. Through her development process, Maslow watched her slowly quit blame, not by denying what happened or forgiving prematurely, but by recognizing her own role in patterns. She saw how she unconsciously chose situations that would challenge her, partners who would disappoint her, jobs that would undervalue her, circumstances that would confirm her victim identity. She told Maslow, "The day I stopped blaming was the day I became free. Not because others weren't wrong. They were. But because I finally saw that holding on to blame was my choice. I was using their wrongness to avoid my own responsibility for my growth." This shift is excruciating for the ego. It means taking responsibility for things that genuinely weren't your fault in a causal sense. It means seeing how you unconsciously participated in your own challenges. It means admitting that, on some level, you needed the very experiences you've spent years blaming others for. Maslow documented the stages of quitting blame. 1. Anger at the unfairness. This shouldn't have happened. 2. Recognition of patterns. This keeps happening. 3. Seeing unconscious participation. I somehow contribute to this. 4. Taking radical responsibility. I am the author of my experience. 5. Transcending the victim-perpetrator paradigm. We are all participants in each other's development. A man who'd spent decades blaming his father for his struggles went through this process. He said, "I realized I'd made my father into a villain to avoid seeing my own patterns. The day I quit blaming him, I saw him clearly for the first time. Just another imperfect human doing his best with his own challenges." And I saw myself clearly too. Not a victim, but a person who unconsciously chose this exact father for my own growth. This doesn't mean accepting abuse or staying in harmful situations. It means recognizing that even our wounds serve our development. Maslow observed that the people who quit blame don't become doormats. They become powerful. They stop giving others the power to define their story. The sixth thing people at higher levels quit is particularly subtle. Achievement addiction, using accomplishments to avoid genuine self-acceptance, using success to escape feelings of inadequacy, using productivity as a strategy to bypass being present. Maslow saw this constantly in high achievers. People using achievement to avoid feeling, using "I'll be enough when I accomplish this" to avoid being enough now, using busyness to avoid stillness, using goals to avoid presence. The achievement treadmill becoming another elaborate defense mechanism. As genuine self-actualization develops, this addiction becomes impossible. Your authentic self demands full acceptance now, not after the next achievement, not when you finally arrive. Now as you are, incomplete and whole simultaneously. You can no longer use future success to escape present reality. Successful entrepreneur came to Maslow after building a multi-million-dollar company. He'd achieved remarkable success, built something significant, reached goals most people only dream of, but his relationships were empty. His inner life was barren. His present moment was unlived. He'd used achievement to bypass his humanity. Maslow watched him slowly quit this addiction. It was more painful than building his company. He had to come back down into the present moment, into his feelings, into his very human needs for connection and meaning. After achieving everything, he had to learn to be satisfied with nothing. After earning his worth, he had to accept his inherent worth. He described it. "I thought development meant achieving more. Now I realize it's about finally being present. I spent 20 years trying to be enough through accomplishment. Now I'm learning to be enough simply by being." The quitting of achievement. Addiction looks like accomplishing things without needing them for identity, being productive without using it to avoid feelings, having goals without attaching your worth to them, being present even when nothing is being achieved, accepting yourself before the next milestone. This creates what Maslow observed as psychological maturity, the ability to be fully productive and fully present simultaneously, not using one to escape the other, but living at the intersection where doing meets being. The final thing people at higher levels quit might surprise you. The isolation of development. The belief that psychological growth means growing apart from others. That consciousness creates loneliness. That self-actualization means being alone. Maslow observed that while development often requires periods of solitude, genuine self-actualization leads back to connection. But connection of a completely different quality, not the unconscious merging of the undeveloped, but the conscious meeting of the actualized. Early in development, isolation feels necessary and even noble. You're seeing through illusions others still believe. You're understanding things others don't understand. You're developing capacities others haven't developed. How can you possibly connect with people who aren't on this path? But Maslow watched this subtle superiority slowly dissolve in those who continued developing. They quit the arrogance of being more developed. They quit the identity of being the evolved one among the undeveloped. They quit the isolation that was actually protecting them from intimacy. A woman who'd spent years in developmental solitude told Maslow, "I thought I was alone because I was too developed for others. Then I realized I was alone because I was afraid of being seen in my humanity, my struggles, my very non-actualized moments. My developmental isolation was actually developmental pride." As she quit this isolation, something beautiful happened. She found she could connect with anyone, not by lowering her development, but by embracing her humanity, she could be with less developed people without judgment, because she recognized her own undeveloped areas. She could love struggling people because she remembered her own struggles. Maslow documented that. Genuine self-actualization leads to what he called being love, the ability to connect without merging, love without attachment, be intimate without losing self, share truth without preaching, be together in individuality. The quitting of isolation doesn't mean returning to unconscious social patterns. It means finding those rare others who are also quitting approval seeking, quitting specialness, quitting performance, quitting certainty, quitting blame, quitting achievement addiction. And with these people creating something new. Conscious community. As we reach the end of this journey through what people at higher levels quit, Maslow would want you to understand something crucial. This quitting isn't loss. It's liberation. Each thing you release creates space for something more authentic to emerge. When you quit seeking approval, inner worth emerges. When you quit being special, true uniqueness emerges. When you quit performing happiness, genuine joy emerges. When you quit needing certainty, wisdom emerges. When you quit blame, power emerges. When you quit achievement addiction, presence emerges. When you quit isolation, real connection emerges. The process is slow because it's not just behavioral change. It's identity transformation. You're not just quitting habits. You're quitting who you thought you were. And that takes time, courage, and enormous compassion for yourself. Maslow observed that this process typically takes years, even decades. You'll quit and return. Release and grip again. Let go and grab back. This isn't failure. It's the spiral nature of growth. Each time you return to an old pattern, you're a little less attached. Each time you grip again, your grip is a little looser. If you're in this process of slowly quitting, Maslow would want you to know you're not losing yourself. You're finding yourself. Every release is a revelation. Every letting go is a coming home. The things you're quitting need to be experienced fully before they could be released. You needed to seek approval to know the emptiness of external validation. You needed to be special to discover the freedom of being ordinary. You needed certainty to appreciate openness. You needed to blame to find your power. This isn't a process you can rush or force. The quitting happens in its own time, in its own way. Your job isn't to quit faster, but to be present with the quitting, to notice what's falling away, to grieve what's dying, to celebrate what's being born. And remember, you're not alone in this. All over the world, people are developing and quietly quitting the same things. We're all discovering that. Psychological growth isn't about adding more. It's about releasing what was never true. Not about becoming someone new, but about quitting being someone we're not. If this journey resonates with you, if you're recognizing your own slow quitting in these patterns, subscribe to this channel and become part of our growing community of developing individuals. Hit the notification bell so you don't miss our explorations of human development and self-actualization. And remember, every time you quit something that no longer serves your authentic self, you're not losing. You're ascending. You're climbing Maslow's hierarchy not by adding more, but by releasing what blocks your natural development. This is the path. Not addition, but subtraction. Not becoming more, but becoming real. And in that reality, you find what you've been seeking all along. Not perfection, not completion, but authentic presence with who you actually are. This is self-actualization. This is development. This is the quiet quitting that leads to genuine becoming.